Like, subscribe, and comment if you're ready to walk straight into the darkest corners of California's justice system. Because once this story starts, there's no turning back. The sirens were already fading when the body was found, floating face down in the black water just east of San Quentin State Prison. It was 4:17 a.m., fog clinging to bay like a dirty secret. The prison's towering walls glowing under floodlights that never slept. A fisherman had spotted the shape near the rocks. Too still, too human. By the time deputies arrived, the tide had nudged the body closer, as if delivering it deliberately to the shadow of death row. The man was white, late 30s, dressed in civilian clothes that didn't belong near a maximum security prison at that hour. His hands were bound with zip ties, professional grade, the kind sold in bulk. No wallet, no phone. One thing stood out immediately, a folded piece of paper stuffed into his jacket pocket, sealed in plastic. Written in block letters were 4 words: San Quentin remembers. Detective Mara Ellison stared at the note as the coroner zipped the body bag shut. In 12 years with Marin County major crimes, she'd learned that killers like to announce themselves. But this wasn't a signature. It was a warning. San Quentin loomed behind her, old, decaying, and legendary. Death Row sat inside like a sealed vault a men the state had decided could never walk free again. The prison had a history soaked in violence, appeals, reversals, and secrets buried deeper than the concrete foundations. And now, someone had dumped a message at his doorstep. By sunrise, the victim was identified as Daniel Hargreave, a freelance legal investigator who specialized in death penalty cases. He wasn't famous, but he was effective, known for digging through old trial transcripts, tracking down witnesses who disappeared, and finding inconsistencies no one wanted found. His last contract? A condemned inmate housed on San Quentin's East Block. Ellison felt the clock start ticking the moment she read that name. The inmate was Victor Salgado, convicted 20 years earlier for the brutal stabbing of a young couple during a roadside robbery in 2003. The evidence back then had been airtight. Eyewitness testimony, blood on Salgado's jacket, a confession signed after 12 hours of interrogation. The jury had taken less than a day. Death Row had taken the rest of his life, until Hargreave showed up. According to his email records, Hargreave had visited San Quentin 3 times in the past month. His notes, pulled from a cloud backup, were obsessive. Timelines rewritten. Witness statements highlighted in red. One phrase appeared again and again in the margins. Who benefits? Ellison drove to Hargreave's apartment in Oakland by mid-morning. The place was immaculate, almost sterile, except for one room, his office. Case files covered the walls, connected by string and thumbtacks like a mind unraveling in real time. At the center was Salgado's photo, prison-issued, eyes flat and unreadable. But what made Ellison's stomach tighten wasn't Salgado. It was the second face pinned beside him, Assistant District Attorney Colin Reeves. Reeves had prosecuted the Salgado case early in his career, building a reputation as ruthless, efficient, and ambitious. He now sat comfortably in a downtown office, rumored to be eyeing a judicial appointment. On Hargreave's wall, Reeves' name was circled, underlined twice. Ellison's phone buzzed before she could process it. Another body. This one hadn't floated. It was found inside a maintenance tunnel beneath San Quentin, accessible only with clearance badges or intimate knowledge of the prison's aging infrastructure. The victim was a corrections officer, mid-40s, a 20-year veteran. His throat hadn't been cut. He'd been strangled, quiet, controlled. Tucked into his uniform pocket was another note. Same plastic, same handwriting. Balance. The warden tried to keep it quiet. 2 deaths linked to San Quentin in less than 24 hours would spark panic, questions, headlines. But Ellison knew containment was already impossible. Someone was moving with purpose, targeting people connected to death row cases. And whoever was understood the prison better than most of the men locked inside it. Back at headquarters, Ellison finally received clearance to review restricted visitation logs tied to Salgado. One entry stood out, a visit scheduled for that afternoon. Requested weeks ago, approved under special circumstances. The visitor wasn't a lawyer. It was Daniel Hargreave. Ellison stared at the timestamp. pulse thudding in her ears. According to the coroner, Hargreave had been dead since at least 2 a.m., which meant someone else had used his name. She grabbed her coat and headed for San Quentin as the fog rolled back in, swallowing the road behind her. Whatever was happening inside those walls wasn't finished. And when they opened the sealed East Block interview room, what waited inside would turn a closed case into a death sentence for the truth itself. The men who know the truth. San Quentin swallowed Detective Mara Ellison. Hold a moment, she passed through the final steel gate. The air inside the prison was different. Stale, heavy, laced with decades of regret and controlled violence. Guards avoided her eyes as they escorted her down the corridor toward East Block, their boots echoing like a countdown. Whatever was happening here had already infected the staff. The interview room door stood ajar. Inside, a man sat calmly at the metal table, hands folded, posture relaxed. He wasn't Daniel Hargreave. He wasn't even close. Victor Salgado looked thinner than his prison photo, older, his hair threaded with gray. But his eyes were sharp, alert in a way Ellison hadn't expected. He smiled faintly when he saw her, as if he'd been waiting. "You're late," Salgado said. Ellison froze. "You weren't supposed to have a visit today." Salgado leaned back. Funny thing about schedules in this place. They change. The guard swore under his breath. The log clearly showed Hargreave as the approved visitor, yet Salgado was sitting there, uncuffed, unrestrained, as if someone had bent protocol just for him. Ellison felt the first real spike of fear crawl up her spine. "Who let you in here?" she demanded. Salgado tilted his head. "You should be asking who let him die." Ellison slammed the file onto the table. Photos spilled out. Hargreave's body, the note, the correctional officer in the tunnel. Salgado didn't flinch. He studied them carefully, like a man reviewing exhibits he'd already memorized. "They finally noticed," he murmured. "Notice what?" Ellison snapped. Salgado's smile faded. "That this place doesn't just hold monsters. It protects them." Before Ellison could push further, the door burst open. Warden Price stormed in, face flushed, flanked by 2 armed guards. The visit was terminated on the spot. Salgado was hauled away, still silent, his eyes never leaving Ellison's until the door slammed shut. "Whatever you think you're doing," Price hissed, "you're done here." Ellison didn't argue. She didn't need to. The cracks were already showing. Back outside, the fog had thickened again, swallowing the prison like a living thing. Ellison's phone rang as she reached her car. The coroner, the corrections officer's autopsy was back. Time of death placed the murder before Hargreave was killed. 2 victims. 1 message each. But the order mattered. Someone had started this long, before the fishermen found that body in the bay. Ellison dug deeper into Hargreave's files that night, working past exhaustion, fueled by a sense that she was running behind a killer who'd already planned 10 moves ahead. One folder stood out, encrypted, password-protected, labeled simply, Reeves. She cracked it just after midnight. Inside were audio recordings. Old ones. Interrogation tapes from 2003, never entered into evidence. On the recording, a younger Colin Reeves questioned Victor Salgado for hours. The tone shifted. Voices were raised. Threats were made. Then came the silence. When the audio resumed, Salgado sounded broken, confused, agreeable. Ellison sat back, cold spreading through her chest. The confession wasn't just coerced. It had been manufactured, and Reeves had buried it. At 2:06 a.m., her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. A single text message appeared on her screen. Ask Reeves about the tunnel. Ellison was out the door in seconds. Colin Reeves' home sat in the hills above Sausalito, glass and steel overlooking the bay. 2 open, 2 exposed. Police lights were already there when she arrived. The front door was wide open. Inside, the house was immaculate, except for the blood smeared across the marble floor, leading toward the study. Reeves was alive barely. He lay slumped against his desk, clutching his side, eyes wide with terror. He knows. Reeves gasped when he saw Ellison. Salgado knows everything. Who did this? Ellison demanded. Reeves shook his head, breath rattling. Not Salgado. Someone else. Someone who worked the cases. Someone who lost everything. Before he could say more, the power cut out. The house plunged into darkness. A shot rang out. Ellison dove, gun raised, heart hammering as glass shattered somewhere behind her. By the time backup flooded the house, the attacker was gone. Reeves was dead. Pinned to his chest with a letter opener was a familiar plastic-wrapped note. Justice takes time. As dawn crept over the bay, Ellison stood alone in the ruined house, staring at the message she now understood too well. This was a revenge. It was correction. And whoever was behind it wasn't finished, not until San Quentin gave up every secret it had buried. What Ellison didn't know yet was that the next name on the list was already inside the prison walls. Death Row keeps its promises. San Quentin locked down before sunrise. Sirens wailed across the yard as guards rushed inmates back into their cells, steel doors slamming in violent unison. Word spread fast when fear entered prison, faster than truth, faster than orders. Detective Mara Ellison stood just outside East Block, staring at the concrete walls that had swallowed generations of killers and secrets. Somewhere inside, the final name on the list was still breathing. The name wasn't an inmate. It was Lieutenant Aaron Kessler, head of internal security, 25 years on the job, untouchable reputation. He had overseen evidence transfers, controlled surveillance access, and quietly handled irregularities no one else wanted on record. Hargreaves' files painted him as a ghost of multiple wrongful convictions, always present, never questioned, including Salgado's. Ellison confronted Kessler in the security control room, a place humming with monitors and red standby lights. He didn't run. He didn't deny it. "I kept this place from falling apart," Kessler said calmly. "You think the system survives without men like me?" Ellison noticed his hands trembling. Before she could arrest him, the alarm screamed again, this time from Death Row itself. Cell E17. Victor Salgado. Ellison sprinted down the corridor as guards fumbled with keys. When the cell door finally slid open, the smell hit first, metallic, sharp. Salgado lay on the floor, blood pooling beneath him, wrists bound with zip ties identical to the first victim's. His eyes were open, staring at the ceiling. Alive. Barely. Pinned to his chest was the final note. Truth has a cost. Salgado's voice was a rasp when Ellison knelt beside him. "He told you I was a monster," Salgado whispered. "But monsters don't need lies." An ambulance was called, but everyone in that corridor knew the odds. As Salgado was wheeled away, Ellison felt something break inside her. Not relief, not victory. Just the weight of a system that only reacted when blood forced it to. They found Kessler an hour later, hanging in a maintenance corridor beneath the prison, staged to look like suicide. But the details were wrong. The knot was too precise, the timing too convenient. And taped to the wall beside him was a final message, written smaller, tighter than the others. Correction complete. No fingerprints. No witnesses. No suspect. The official story closed fast. An internal memo blamed a rogue former investigator acting alone, driven by obsession and mental instability. Hargreaves was labeled a killer, his death explained away as an attempted escape gone wrong. The corrections officer? Collateral. Reeves? A tragic casualty of old mistakes. The public accepted it. San Quentin stayed silent. 3 weeks later, Victor Salgado died in a hospital bed, never regaining consciousness. His execution warrant was never lifted. The state closed the file. But Ellison didn't. Late one night, she replayed Hargreaves' recordings again, searching for something she'd missed. In the background of one tape, barely audible, was another voice. Calm, older, coaching Reeves during the interrogation. A man correcting answers. Ellison froze. She recognized it. The voice belonged to the prison chaplain. Reverend Thomas Hale had been present during dozens of death row cases over the years, offering spiritual guidance during interrogations, appeals, and final days. Trusted, invisible, untouchable. When Ellison went to question him, his office was empty. Hale had retired that morning. No forwarding address. Weeks passed, then months. The case faded into background noise. Another dark chapter in California's justice system. Until one final envelope arrived on Ellison's desk, postmarked from Nevada. Inside was a single photograph. A desert highway at dusk. A makeshift roadside memorial. 2 white crosses. And beneath it, a handwritten note. Balance is a revenge. It's remembering. Ellison stared at the photo, realizing the truth too late. The killer hadn't been trying to escape justice. He'd been delivering it. San Quentin Death Row still stood. The cells were still full. The walls still whispered. But somewhere out there, a man who knew every lie the system ever told was still walking free, quietly correcting the past, one name at a time. And if you think this story ends here, trust me, the next one is already beginning. So hit subscribe, because some truths refuse to stay buried.